it comes to Zelda, and especially with the movie in the works, we all have our own artistic interpretations on what kind of film we want to see, and especially who'd be the best at making it. Now, I'm not a little hater by any means, but it just feels redundant to keep saying that Ghibli would be the best pick. With each stone laid down in the Zelda timeline, we keep seeing new and different iterations of this world. Sure, some are plenty similar, but some are wildly different. Very much so. So to keep saying over and over that Ghibli would be the best, with little to no other hats in the ring, goes against the very narrative of the franchise. Every version of Link is different. Funneling every version of Zelda into the same whimsical beauty of Ghibli would frankly strip you of so much. Every Zelda has a distinct feel. It's meant to have a distinct feel. This is like asking for every Spider-Man to be in the same style. Yes, Ghibli is fantastic at what they do. That cannot be said enough. They are startlingly proficient at making magic lifelike and grounded, which are themes that lend itself greatly to Zelda's pathos. This is nothing I have to convince you all of. We all love Ghibli, and for damn good reason. If anything, they're my pick for a Breath of the Wild film, what with their works like Princess Mononoke and The Boy and the Heron. I often do a thing for funsies where I equate games to various shows. A Splatoon anime would look like Eizouken, a Jet Set Radio anime would look like Fully Cooley, a Psychonauts show would look like a movie from you get it, yeah? And for one of the most prolific Zelda games, one of the most iconic, the game that set up so much of Zelda's modern day lore, there's one studio's style that I think would be absolutely perfect. A studio that I adore, yet most people take for granted. The studio that I think would be great at adapting Ocarina of Time. That being Rankin Bass. Plenty of ink has been spilled about how the works this studio makes aren't up to snuff to the standards of many, which I find way more of a subjective take than people let on. Like, hello? Rankin Bass is amazing! Whether it's 2D cell animation or stop motion, they've always been stylistically solid and charming. My two favorite stop motion films of theirs are Santa Claus is Coming to Town and A Year Without a Santa Claus. Both are just effortlessly fun and endearing, and I make a point to watch them every year around Christmas time with my family. However, my absolute favorite work of theirs, hands down, is Frosty's Winter Wonderland, a film that takes the stylization of the first Frosty movie even further, creating something incredibly solid and memorable. A film that artistically inspired me a ton as a kid.
Friend? Friend?
You've made us very happy.
Hey, everybody! Happy birthday! Happy birthday!
So why do I think out of all studios, they would be the best for a title like Ocarina? Simply because of a little film based on a book of the same name, The Last Unicorn. The Last Unicorn, a film from 1982, tells the story of Amalthea, a tranquil unicorn who finds out she is the last of her kind. Over the course of her journey, she experiences things that her kin have never faced before: grief, loss, violence, regret, change, love. Things that a pure, eternal creature like herself becomes tainted from, coming to terms with the fickle, mortal woes of what makes life special. Okay, so I've known about this film for years. It's Dan Avidan's favorite film after all, and finally got around to watching it this year. I liked it so much and got word that the book is an absolute classic, so I picked it up and have been currently making my way through it. Peter S. Beagle's prose is just so beautiful, and it's given me great insight on my own descriptive writing. As this story has occupied my mind, I, of course, started to form some connections. Nevertheless, the film places itself into territory that I think would be perfect for an Ocarina of Time film. These two stories, one an animated movie and one an N64 game, have many similarities within presentation and narrative, and I thought it'd be interesting to see how they lined up together when compared, to perhaps understand more about their stories, and maybe more about myself. So join me, if you will, in a beautiful, magical forest. Our stories begin in lush woods, youthful and teeming with mirthful life. Our protagonists, a unicorn named Amalthea and a young boy named Link, both go through their days in peaceful serenity, their ways of living untouched by the outside world. It isn't until a call to action arrives, via a little winged creature, that they are sent on their merry way to save their world. Whether it be by destiny or inner existential crisis, both Link and Amalthea are special for their kin, unassuming to most eyes, but truly are something extraordinary. In this world Amalthea treads through, the eyes of men are unable to see her horn, making her a simple, albeit beautiful white mare in their gaze. Only women, and those magically inclined, like Schmendrick the Magician and Molly Grew, are able to see her for what she truly is, and help her set out to find who that may be. Link, on the other hand, is a Kokiri, a humanoid race that stays forever young. To keep their innocence and stay alive, they're unable to leave their home in the Deku Tree's forest. Link, however, is the one who must save the Deku Tree from a curse, because he is the chosen hero of Hyrule. There's even more to him that even eludes Ganon's perception of the boy. He learns later that he never was a Kokiri, but rather a Hylian, destined to wield the Master Sword and the Triforce of Courage to save Hyrule as the hero of time. Amalthea's quest is to set her kin free after the Red Bull, under order of King Haggard, drove them to the ends of the earth. She'll do anything to find them, anything to know that she isn't the last one. Link's quest is to free the Seven Sages, save Princess Zelda, and defeat Ganon to save his world from darkness. Both of them are given wild, wondrous magic to aid them on their journey, and through the recalcitrance of these gifts, they learn to tame that power and truly wield it. Amalthea and Link know, well, all that there is to know when you've spent your whole life in a forest, but once they step into the outside world, their ground of knowledge shifts and quakes with a different roar. Link gets all sorts of tools to assist him, including the Ocarina of Time itself, able to play enchanted tunes that augment his world. Amalthea uses her horn to set things right, and Schmendrick assists in more out-of-the-box ways. Throughout both of their harrowing, cathartic journeys, they both change greatly as people, unable to go back to those simple lives as the same innocent being. Amalthea, as a unicorn, was never meant to feel things like regret and pity for fellow man, while Link was, at least told, that he'd never grow up to be an adult. Both of them experience horrors of reality and cannot escape those moments unshaken by sheer truth. Link learns to fight and falter. Amalthea learns to love and lose. They not only go through immense mental change, but physical change as well, as the world around them shows its fangs. Young Link, after unsheathing the Master Sword, becomes an adult. Amalthea gets turned into a human by Schmendrick to hide from the Red Bull's wrath. Both of them grieve what they had, aware that this new form is part of the burden they must bear. Amalthea takes it the hardest, horrified and weeping over what she's become, and even starts to lose her memory in this human state, her magical purity snuffed out. With the broken remnants of themselves, the two must get back up and make their world whole again, even when they've lost everything. Two unlikely heroes of courage that truly come into their own. So, with that said, just what is this world that they've stepped into? The comfort of the forest and the wild unknown outside are two big parts of Ocarina and Unicorn's narrative, but once their true journey begins, the seeds of horror have already been sown. The first three temples of Ocarina and the Midnight Carnival with Mama Fortuna are only a taste of what's to come. Getting the three spiritual stones and escaping the witch with Schmendrick are the entry tests to their journey, if you will, merely Act 1. Once Link pulls out the Master Sword from the Temple of Time, and when Amalthea sets out to find King Haggard, that's when everything changes. It's revealed that hope and light has been ravaged and scorned from this world, leaving nothing but vengeful monsters, heartless overlords, gloomy citizens, and horrific secrets, all set under dark, cloudy skies. And their world, the villains, have already won. Ganondorf rules over Hyrule. King Haggard has eradicated unicorns. Darkness and misery thrives all around them. Now, they're on man's road.
For in my heart I carry such a heavy load. Here I am on man's road, walking man's road, walking man's road.
But there are those who remember, those who see our hero and are overwhelmed with a sickness they thought they cured long ago. That remarkable little thing called hope.
Can it truly be? Where have you been? Where have you been? Where have you been?
Don't you talk to her that way.
I'm here now. Oh, and where were you 20 years ago? 10 years ago? Where were you when I was new? When I was one of those innocent young maidens you always come to? How dare you? How dare you come to me now, when I am this?
Can you really see her? Do you really know what she is?
If you had been waiting to see a unicorn as long as I have,
She's the last unicorn in the world.
it would be the last unicorn in the world that came to Molly Crew. It's all right. I forgive you.
There, still standing in the world they had left, or perhaps had never seen, live people whose hearts had not been gouged by fear and malice. They're more than willing to lend a hand, lend their power to the hero, and help them see the sun once more. A resistance is gained on their journey, and though it may be small, it's more than enough to break the tide and to shine through the dark. You know, I wrote this video about 3 months ago, but I think it's become more timely than ever. So, please, take care of each other. "2D Rankin Bass and the Nintendo 64 both utilize very similar frameworks to display their stories. Both of these worlds deal in the setting of dark fantasy, mixed with light fantasy? High fantasy? To set a mood within. The promo art for Ocarina of Time and The Last Unicorn are done with such fidelity and detail. This is one of my favorite Links. His young and adult forms feel so unique and of this era. But the game medium they use, for time and money's sake, cannot replicate all of those intricacies. The N64 uses very simplistic polygonal models, with just enough to let us as the player fill in the gaps. In a lot of locations, you're literally walking around a crusty JPEG. And I love it. Its world may not be incredibly refined, but it still feels rich and cozy. You still very much understand what they were going for. I love the castle town, I love Kakariko, I love the Zora Fountain, and I love Hyrule Field. I especially like the almost paper cutout look of the adjacent location when you look through an entryway. Some of the whites of the pixel edges showing as all its little buildings are accounted for. Shout out to the PNG shark! Gotta love the PNG shark. There should be a speed run where you just get to the PNG shark as fast as possible. Fucking shark percent. The N64 has a very special look to me, as they utilized a lot of free assets for textures, giving their worlds a muddled, blocky feel. I adore the look of the menus, with it feeling like little walls of a dungeon. I'm a massive fan of old school 3D renders from this era too, where they made the cardinal sin of shading with black, and yet it looks awesome. This old design sensibility is just untouchable, dude. With the N64 sound font, they translated a classical sound digitally, and I love the fact that it's not one-to-one. It's still a computer, a world within an old 90s console. And yeah, I think that's what makes it timeless. The Last Unicorn, however, is animated with hand-painted cells. This is how 2D animation was standardly done in the 80s and decades before, and there's a particular craft to it. Techniques of limited animation taught us how to tell a good story while sticking to budget. You can only use this many frames at a time, make layers for different body parts, keep the colors simple to read, and limited to whatever literal paint we have in stock. Every studio has its own distinct way of animating, so here's Rankin's. They hold on a pose, do lip sync, then interpolate to another pose. This way of animating, plus the expertly considered work of Paul Coker Jr., with a style being not too detailed yet giving us plenty of information, give the studio such an endearing eccentricity that cannot be ignored. The final film has a beautiful washed out look to its palette, covered in deep blues and soft purples. I love Amalthea's design. It's subtly very unique as far as unicorn designs go. She's a stark white to signify her purity, but her flowing wilted hair and sad eyes hint at this tired longing within. The whole style has a very gestural feel, each character brimming with their own magic. It's the things like the floppiness of Schmendrick's sleeves or the waves of Molly Gru's hair. Everything is just so naturally angled and every line tapers off just so, and it's just so appealing and considered. Rankin's whole catalog and their style language should be mentioned up there with the greats in my heart. Along with Ocarina, Unicorn also uses contemporary means of music to convey emotion. This film, for the most part, is a non-diegetic musical with songs done by vocal artist America. And wow, this movie made me an instant fan of his work. Man's Road is undoubtedly my favorite song in the whole film. His style is much more acoustic and wistful than what you'd expect, yet still has the enchanted lute-strumming sensibilities of medieval fantasy music. It's the disconnect between a more acoustic country voice paired with this moody, thought-provoking fairy tale that really hits me. Also, yeah, his vocal cadence is endearingly similar to Dan Avidan's. They both knock these songs out of the park. These two worlds, in presentation and subject matter, have a lot in common. Sweet and ominous, dark and yet beautiful, often bathed in magical, cozy melancholy. In Ocarina of Time's gameplay, you go through temples and solve puzzles, and in many ways, Amalthea and her friends do the same. It's a world filled with all sorts of strange magical creatures like sentient trees and talking skeletons. It's a world utterly brimming with life that has been captured so earnestly in these forms. Examining what came before for both Zelda and Rankin Bass leads to some fascinating aesthetic connections. Just in the media itself, even the general cadence of dialogue is similar, and in Ocarina, even the noises evoke that same intent Unicorn has. These two works are much more intertwined than you think. The concept art for the first Zelda was uniquely done with a cartoon cell look. Every time I see these, I yearn for a Zelda show that looks like this. But hey, don't these look similar to 2D Rankin Bass's sensibilities? I mean, it's not like the style is the same or anything, but just knowing that they both used this medium is a cool connection. And hey, Rankin even did a Hobbit film. Medieval fantasy is no stranger to them. Also, in Santa Claus is Coming to Town and Year Without a Santa Claus, God, I wish these had shorter titles, a lot of the town designs have a similar vibe and look to Hyrule's architecture. Like, look at these shots and tell me they don't look and feel like Ocarina. The biggest thing is, both of these worlds utilize just enough of the designs to convey what they mean. Yes, it's blurry, yes, it's choppy, but they've undoubtedly stood the test of time. I've been having a hard time putting this feeling into words, but you feel it now, don't you? So, yes, that's why I think a film styled after Rankin Bass's work would be perfect for adapting Ocarina of Time. But the thing is, if you think something else would work better, that's okay. I think my approach would be about conserving Ocarina's feel as faithfully and literally as possible, and Rankin Bass comes hauntingly close to its sensibilities out of anything else I've seen, and I wanted to make a video just to talk about that. But because a lot of the game's assets are so bare bones in aesthetics, seeing a more fleshed out high-definition version is really cool too. I love seeing unique adaptations where things are done differently, and with the moment-to-moment feelings and agencies games uniquely provide, there's practically infinite ways to interpret their stories, because we are the ones that keep them alive and well in our hearts.
There are no happy endings, because nothing ends.
there's something I've been saving for last. While I've been reading the original book for The Last Unicorn, the copy I have has a new introduction written by Patrick Rothfuss. In it, he says something that really struck me, something that as we navigate this vast world, I want you to have and keep with you. It's the notion of this. A book by itself is nothing. It's lifeless clay. I once heard someone say a book is like lightning in a bottle, and it needs the reader to work the stopper loose. And while that's an evocative image, it's dead wrong. It implies that whatever magic stories have lives entirely inside the book, but that's simply untrue. A book isn't like ramen or a packet of hot chocolate. You interact with those, but they're still separate from you, external, independent. Anyone could pour the water and get the same thing. Books are different. A book is a kiss. A book is a dance. A story might come from a book, but the story doesn't live there. The story lives in you, and that version of the story is different than any other version in the world because of what you bring, because of what you think and feel. That's unique. That's rare and wonderful. So there, books aren't ramen. You heard it here first. They're dances. Or rather, you dance with the book. The two of you work in concert, and the story is the dance. It's unique because you're not just adding water, you're adding yourself. This is probably true for all types of art, but I think it's particularly true of books. What's more, books vary in how wild the shared experience can be. Some books are constantly surprising you with new steps they show you when you come back to the dance. Some books help us surprise ourselves. So, reader, meet book. Book, reader. As much as I might want to stick around and make sure you two hit it off, I should go. Sure, I have plenty of thoughts and feelings about the story you're holding here. I'll talk all day about how much I love the language, the arc of story, Schmendrick the Magician, Molly Grew. But if you want my hot take on Haggard and the Red Bull, you can read it on my blog. It doesn't belong here. You have dancing to do. Rankin Bass as a studio may be gone, but what they brought into this world, cozy, vintage works that were unabashedly charming, fun, and sweet, will stay with us forever. Ocarina of Time, whether you love it or not, is a monumental game that changed Zelda forever, and that's something that deserves to be cherished. Nevertheless, both Ocarina of Time and The Last Unicorn, in ways big and small, have inspired me. Perhaps inspired you. So get up, take what you love, hold it tight, and dance the way you want to. Thank you. Hello! I usually just wing the outro, but this time I have a lot to say. I learned a lot while making this video. Like for instance, most of Rankin's pipeline is done in America, but I did not know that all of the actual animation is outsourced to Japan. And you want to know what some of those Japanese employees did after that work? They founded and worked at Ghibli. That's... oh my god. Does that simple fact invalidate this entire video? No, I don't think it does. Like I said, studios have different ways of doing things, regardless of overlap. Cool fact though, this video was a huge undertaking since I talked about two pieces of media side by side, and I liked how moody and atmospheric this one turned out. I haven't finished The Last Unicorn's book yet, but while this was in production, I happened to finally finish Ocarina of Time after trying to beat it my whole life. Wow. That's just a deeply cathartic thing to know I've done. Wow. I want to be as unrestricted and untethered to this channel as possible to make the things I want to make. So that's why this channel, for the time being, has never been monetized. However, if you do want to support me, please consider becoming a patron. I've had a Patreon for years, it's very low stakes, any amount helps, but if you do want to support me directly, it would mean a lot. And you can get fun secret art and intel on projects. For the past year and a half, I've been working on an original story called Island Reverie, a slice-of-life fantasy about 3 humans humans who wash up on a charismatic deity's island that delves into self-worth, fulfillment, and the human condition. It's been so fun to work on, and I'm doing my best to make it as good as it can be. Anyway, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays! Go watch Rankin Bass specials, go read The Last Unicorn, just read in general, read and research about the things you like. Knowledge is power! And a special thank you to Peter S. Beagle for weaving such an amazing tale. I may have only experienced it this year, but it's become one of my all-time favorites. Alright, I'm gonna go now. Goodbye! It's a difficult responsibility when you accept an appointment from His Majesty. Frosty's Winter Frosty's Winter Wonder Frosty